Okay, next step. And feel free to pause this video along the way and so you can just get a good look at my code and make sure that you have the divs all in the right place. You shouldn't see any red along here. If you have red, it probably means you have an opening div and you don't have the closing tag. So the next thing is we're going to start styling this. So I'm going to go up into my CSS area, right? So that's within the opening and closing head tags, and I'm within my opening and closing style tags specifically. And I'm going to go right after the rule I already wrote there for the body, and I'm going to write a rule for my container. So to write the CSS rule for a div with an ID, you start that with a hashtag because that means container. And my code helper gives me a list of every ID on the page. So I could just grab container or I could type it in. And then I do my open curly bracket, come down a line, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give my container a width. So you remember how I'm going to give it a width of 900 px semicolon. So remember how we talked before about controlling the width of your paragraphs so that the text didn't span the whole page? And what we were doing was going into the paragraph tag and giving that a width. Or you were using a lot of BR tags. Well, this is even better. Instead of having to give the width to the paragraph tag, we're going to give the width to the box that it's sitting in. And then we don't have to keep giving a width to all of the different HTML elements. Like let's say you had list items with lots of text or headings that were really long. Everything will always stay within the width of your container. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to get my container to be in the center of the page. So a lot of you guys were trying to figure out hacks of how to do this. You were putting in like huge paddings or margins. Here's the CSS way to do that. You put your margin on the left side to auto. Don't forget the semicolon. And you put your margin on the right side also to auto. That is the CSS way. Make sure you have your semicolon to get your div with the ID into the middle. Basically, it looks at whatever the size is, the margin of the left of the page and the right of the page, and it automatically spaces it out. So let's just save this page at this point and view it in the browser so that we can see that this is working. And there we go. Now it is in the middle. Now this text is wider than I said I would like it to be, but that's okay. We still can go into either the paragraph or to the div that this is in and control that width. All right. But the point is, so now everything, even though I didn't do anything to this div or to this div, but everything is in the middle because I set that attribute, margin left auto, margin right auto, to the container. So it took this box that is wrapping around everything and put that in the middle. That's what we really want to do. All right, let's give that a bit of a background color too, so it has some contrast. So remember how I said, like, let's get the darker colors on the outside of your page, like on your body, and then inside we can do a lighter color. So I'm just going to put in, you can pick any color that you want. Just going to pick like a lighter gray, click over here, and there it's showing up. All right, so we've done our container. Let's move down and write a CSS rule for our next div with an ID heading. Okay, so that starts with the hashtag, write out heading, and open curly bracket, come down a line. Now, one thing that I noticed on this page here is, so I have my container controlling the width of everything. I've given it a different background color, but my text is going right to the edge, and that doesn't look really good. So we're going to add a little bit of padding onto our header to be able to give it that space between the text and the edge. So back over here into my heading, I'm going to give it a padding of let's try 25 px semicolon, and we'll see if we like the way that looks. All right, I can already see it here, but I'm going to save my page and then look at it in the browser. All right, so that looks much better. I might still control the width or do something else here. So these guys didn't get the padding because I only put the padding on a div with the ID of heading. And just for the sake of being able to give different attributes, let's give the heading a different background color as well. And I'm going to pick Alice Blue. Why not? Click over here, and now it has a different color. All right, so now I am going to move down, and I am going to write a rule, a CSS rule for the div with the ID main. We're going to put some images in here, but before we even do that, we can just set this up. What I want from main is I'm going to give it a width of 480 pixels, px. And this is really just to show an example of what if you wanted one of your divs to have a smaller width than your other ones. Notice I didn't set a width for my heading, and I don't need to if I'm okay with it being the same width as my container. So any div that's within the container, if you didn't set the width, it automatically takes the width of your container. So if I did want to have one div that was smaller, see how we have this one div inside here that is smaller than smaller than my container. So let's go through those steps. So I'm setting this one to be 480 pixels. So what I'm going to need to do, because you can see it has leftitis, is I'm going to need to center that. So I'm just going to copy this code and paste that in. And so now when I click over here, now that box will be in the center. And we might as well go ahead and add our images. If you open the folder Images for Blog, I have a series of images, and you're just going to click and drag them in and get rid of the text that says images here. Delete that text. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead grabbing, and they're just going to go one right next to each other. And the cool thing is they will start stacking once they get to be no longer able to fit into the width of the container I put them in. Skip the one that says thumbs. That's not an image. Okay, so here they are, and we're going to have to add some styles to them, but they're at least in there. All right, now going back over to here, the last div we're going to target is our footer. So hashtag footer, put in your open bracket, come down, and what should we do with the footer? Oh, let's just give it a background color as well. Oh, and for consistency, I'm going to give it the same background color as my heading. And I'm going to give it some padding as well because I don't want the text to go all the way to the edge. I'm going to give it 15 px. And because it's a footer and it's just going to be one line of text, we can align that text to be in the center. So that is going to be text, align, center. Don't have to do this, but if you wanted to have your footer information centered, so all you need to do is add that as an attribute to that div. And now put your info here. This would say, this site was created by me, or whatever it is that you want to put there. All right, so in the next video, we're going to get in and we're going to start making compound selectors, which means we're going to target the heading 1 that is within this div, the images that are within this one, and so on and so forth. So We're just going to keep adding more CSS styles.